Welcome back to the Gentleman's Gazette. Have you ever sat through a boring presentation? Or have you ever stood in front of an audience and felt intimidated? Well, I definitely have. And I also gave a presentation once where people actually were yawning and sleeping right in front of me. And it was so distracting and embarrassing that I swore myself I would only give engaging, interesting presentations. Along the way, I learned a few things, and today I want to share my 11 tips on giving a great presentation. At its core, a presentation is always about sharing knowledge, but you want to be engaging. The problem is people have really short attention spans and you have to capture it. So at the very beginning, you have to start by building a presentation around the audience. And that means you have to know who that audience is. Ask yourself, what do they expect from you? Do they think you show up in shorts or in a suit? Even more importantly, ask, what will they get out of my presentation? In our case, it's hopefully some knowledge and entertainment value. Also ask yourself, how do they dress and what do they find funny? Because if you can connect with them and their humor, you're definitely a winner and they find you entertaining. Also, in a professional setting, sometimes humor or storytelling can be frowned upon and you have to understand that, otherwise your presentation may backfire hard. Your overarching goal in a non-professional presentation should be to entertain and engage the audience and just have like one major key point. 2. Focus on your core message and maybe have 3 key points that underline and all point towards that key thing. Otherwise, if you overload your presentation, people find it hard to follow and won't walk away with anything. Now, at the Gentleman's Gazette, our goal is to help men to be gentlemen, and so everything we do evolves around that topic, including this video today. I sure hope you walk away with something useful. If there's something in your presentation that doesn't support that key focus, simply leave it out. 3. Don't think of PowerPoint or Prezi or any other digital software to be your presentation. Your presentation is you and how you deliver it and how you speak. PowerPoint is just there to support you. Therefore, your screen shouldn't just repeat what you say. It should be different. It should be ideally funny, have pictures or videos that underline what you say and explain it. Also, don't read what's on the screen because your audience can do so much faster, and rather have complementary keywords that help them digest your information more easily. Over the years, I've learned a fantastic rule of thumb is the 10-20-30 rule. That means the presentation should be no longer than 10 minutes. It should not have more than 20 slides, and the font size should not be smaller than 30. That means bigger font, fewer words, no sentences. Keep it brief so people can enjoy and understand what you're saying, all the while being entertained. Also, and this goes back to point number 1, if you know your audience, you can style your presentation so it's visually appealing to them, which can be very important. 4, don't script your presentation and just read it. It sounds too stiff, it sounds too boring. It's really important that you use your natural language, and that means you have to practice, practice, practice. For example, if you look at TED Talks, they're not allowed to use a teleprompter or read notes. They simply have to internalize it. And once you do that, you can really get through the clutter and just provide valuable stuff. 5, dress the part. Again, that all starts with knowing your audience, but also yourself. For example, showing up in a 3-piece pinstripe suit with a bow tie at a plumber union's meeting won't give you any props. So in general, wear something that's a little bit more formal than what your target audience wears. Unless, of course, you yourself have a certain brand image. For example, I would always give a presentation in a suit or in a combination because we are about helping men be gentlemen, and we think classic style is extremely important in accomplishing that goal. For example, if you're in an office with a dress code business casual and you can learn more about this dress code here, you probably want to add a blazer. That way you look authoritative and it subconsciously sends the signal that what you have to say is of value. 6, start strong. This is the most crucial point of engagement. You want to start with a story, an anecdote, or a controversial question or quote that really gets you the attention of your audience. Just saying hello everyone or let's get started is not the way to do it. Don't be afraid to show vulnerability or maybe share something embarrassing because it makes you more relatable and people will root for you from the get-go. Again, look at TED Talks. No one just rattles off their credentials or why they're here in the beginning. They make it part of a story. Which brings us to point number 7. Tell good stories. So first of all, what is a story? Actually, it's very simple. It is a hero that overcomes an obstacle to reach a goal. The higher this obstacle, the higher the goal, the more compelling the story. Always keep in mind, people root for the underdog, but at the same time, your story should always relate to that key focus you have in your presentation. Don't be afraid to use another person's or another company's story if it supports your focus point. So now that's the theory, right? For example, if you look at Halo Sleep Sacks and you look at their story, you're much more compelled to buy the product. The father who invented that sleep sack did it because his daughter died of sudden infant death syndrome, and he believes it may be connected to the fact that she had a blanket and suffocated from it. Now, that is a dad, right? And he had this obstacle to overcome that he wanted to keep children from dying, and so he created that sleep sack, and he reached that goal with fewer kids dying now. All the while, you feel really connected to him. You really buy his story because it's genuine, and he overcame that obstacle of his daughter dying to reach this goal. Quite compelling, right? 8. Aim for a conversational tone. At first, you might think you have to sound authoritative or maybe very passionate, and while that's good, it really helps if you can engage with your audience and have a very conversational tone, because that means you engage with them. For example, I never use a teleprompter because I feel it's too stiff, it's not me, and it's just not the way I talk. Therefore, I script it and I speak to the camera, and if I screw up, and trust me, that happens a lot more often than you think. So the first thing you have to do before you we'll just cut it and add it in so it sounds smooth and you get a good presentation. 9. In a live presentation, it's extremely important to engage your audience in numerous ways. One of them is to make eye contact. And while it may seem impossible, you can gaze through the room, you can go with your eyes from left to right, and make sure you look people in the eye. However, more importantly, if you can engage your audience in a way that supports your subject matter, that's really best. For example, the other day I was at a presentation where they talked about social pressure creating diminished performance. Now, instead of just having that on the slide, what the person did was they put up a slide with numbers, and it was like 9.32 and 0.58, and you had to add things up so they would amount to 10. First, he just told the audience, just do it in your head and figure out what two numbers are correct. Then, in a second step, he actually said, okay, now please stand up and do it, and if you're done with it, sit down. So when people started sitting down, the people who were still standing, they became more nervous, they became just not sure about it, and then they would take even much longer to find the right answer. And so it was very interesting because people really felt that when they had that social pressure, they really would perform more poorly, which was the subject of this presentation. So it's always much better to make people feel in a certain way rather than just telling them. 10. Don't worry about being nervous and simply admit to it. Most audiences, especially larger ones, will expect you to be slightly nervous, but if it's something that's hindering you, the best thing you can do is to acknowledge it up front, because that way people will root for you because they can relate to you. 11. Last but not least, give a quick summary of your presentation and highlight the major takeaway so people can at least walk home with that one thing that they can apply in their life. So to give a great presentation, you first have to analyze your audience. You have to focus on your core message. You don't have to think about PowerPoint or your software. You don't script what you do in your presentation. You dress the part. You start strong, you tell good stories, you aim for a conversational tone, you engage your audience, you don't worry about being nervous, and you give a brief summary about what you just did. Now, if you just want to walk away with one thing from this presentation, it is to tell good stories that start with a hero that has to overcome an obstacle to reach a goal. And you get bonus points if you show vulnerability and make fun of yourself. If you're not curious about what a good presentation actually looks like, please head over to our website where we have links and videos to a few of them so you can actually see live examples. In today's video, I'm wearing, of course, a suit because that's part of my brand, and it is a houndstooth suit in brown and off-white. I pair it with a contrasting vest in kind of a greenish mottled tweed. I pair it with a white dress shirt with French cuffs and brown and gold eagle claw cufflinks from Fort Belvedere, which you can find in our shop, just like the green pocket square, as well as the brown and green striped tie. As you can see, green and brown are the topic of this outfit, which is why you can also find olive green shoes and kind of a dark gray sock that blends in with the pants and contrasts the shoe and not distracting from it.